TRON is really good at creating that feeling because everything happens fast enough that there's almost no moment where anyone stops and thinks about what remains attached to the transfer afterward. But after testing AF wallets, exchanges, and transfer routes, I started paying attention to something else. Now, whether funds arrive, they usually do. More like what that transfer looks like later when those same funds interact with another platform. Because TRON is transparent by design. Addresses are visible, amounts are visible, timing stays visible. And once that history becomes input for exchange monitoring, internal compliance systems, or automated risk models, interpretation starts becoming a part of the process too. That doesn't mean direct wallet-to-wallet transfers are wrong, but it does mean that sending directly and assuming transaction context never matters can sometimes create unnecessary friction later. So for this video, I want to show a workflow that approaches transfers differently, with more attention to separation, privacy trade-offs, and reducing how directly the transaction path appears. Alright, first step, connecting the wallet. There are several available options here. I'm using Trust Wallet. Connection completed, balance is loaded, everything looks normal. From here, I select the asset I want to move. Then I copy receiving address and paste it here. Then I enter the amount I want to send, and then I configure routing section. Here I choose how many intermediary addresses participate before funds reach the final destination. I don't think about this setting as more privacy or less privacy. For me, it's more about changing how straightforward the transfer path becomes. If the route has more stages, movement becomes less direct from an on-chain perspective. Okay, then there are two additional parameters. One distributes execution into uneven portions instead of moving one exact amount, and two introduces variation between transaction timing, so everything doesn't happen in one continuous block. Small changes on screen, but technically they affect how the transfer unfolds. Okay, then I confirm transaction, and depending on the route and timing settings, this can take a little time. So at this point, I'm mostly waiting for completion. Balance updated, tokens arrived, amount matches, transfer finished. So this is usually where I stop and explain what actually changed. TRON still stays public, transfers still exist exactly where they always existed. What changes is how directly one address activity points to another. Instead of one immediate wallet-to-wallet movement, execution can be structured across separate stages with different timing and amount distribution, which guarantees how every exchange or platform will evaluate future deposits and removes compliance checks. Reducing obvious linkage and avoiding unnecessary exposure can still matter in practice, especially on transparent networks where transaction history may later become part of automated review. Another thing I checked while testing this setup, custody. Because personally, I don't like workflows where privacy depends on handing assets to someone else. Here, approvals stay inside the wallet. Execution gets coordinated without turning the process into a deposit and return model. So that's everything I wanted to cover in this one. Hope seeing it end to end made the trade-offs easier to understand. I'm gonna keep testing different transfer models, wallets, and infrastructure the same way I always do. And if something turns out to be worth looking at, I'll make another breakdown. Thanks for watching.